Hi, this is Bill Hammond here. Today I'm going to talk about caring for the Alzheimer's patient. You know, in past videos we've talked about planning, about getting the right legal foundation in place so that you and your family are never out of money and out of options. Today's a little bit different. Today we're going to talk about how to care for your loved one who has Alzheimer's. The first thing I want to remind you is that every single person who has Alzheimer's is different. They are each individuals. You know, if you read a lot of the literature, if you talk to people, there's a real tendency here to talk about, things like stages of the disease and, what stage is your loved one in. And while I sometimes think that that's helpful, I also sometimes think that it's misleading because not every single patient who has Alzheimer's goes through every single stage. And in effect, it sometimes gets us distracted from what's really going on here. So let's talk about that a little bit. First thing I want to tell you is that, your loved one needs to feel safe. They need to feel loved. They need to feel needed. And they need to feel useful. That's not always coming across in some of the literature, and yet I think it's a really crucial thing because you may be looking at your loved one now and recognizing how difficult the caregiving stresses are, but I want you to take a few minutes and just kind of think back on all the good times that you've had and how this person might have been, the head of the family or a partner or a parent or a spouse, and remember all the things that you've all been through. And one of the things that's so difficult about Alzheimer's disease is it's so darn stressful. They call it the long goodbye. It goes on and on and on. And, there's all kinds of guilt feelings that are involved with that. And one of the reasons why I mention this is because it's going to be so important for you to remember to take care of yourself. That's a key here. As far as taking care of your loved one with Alzheimer's, kind of the bedrock concept is something that we call behavior acceptance. What is behavior acceptance? Well, really what that means is on anything that your loved one does, the key question you want to ask each and every time, and after you've done this a bit, it'll just become second nature. The key question you want to ask is their behavior harmful? Is it physically or mentally harmful to them? And if the answer is it's not, then the answer is it's okay for them to do that. Let me give you an example. Let's say that your loved one who has Alzheimer's gets up in the morning and decides to put his shoes on and then decides to put his socks over his shoes. Well, you and I might look at that and we might say, boy, that's just messed up. We know the socks don't go on over the shoes. But your loved one's looking at it, and your loved one absolutely knows that the socks, in this instance, do go over the shoes. Well, you can do one of two things. You can either say, I need to correct that behavior, and you might start a big fight. Or you might say, is it harmful in any way? Now, if you had very slippery floors and it was going to be a physical danger to them, then you got to step in and fix it. But if it's not physically harmful, then you need to jump back into the it's okay to allow that behavior. I'll give you another example. Let's say instead of putting the socks on over the shoes, your loved one puts the socks on over on his hands. Okay. Behavior acceptance theory says there's nothing wrong with that, not going to be harmful, I'm going to allow it. Or if he puts his underwear on over his pants, okay. Or if he wears combinations of clothes that are very funny looking to you, once again ask the question, is it harmful? If it's not harmful, then it's okay. We live in Kansas, okay? During July and August, it gets really hot around here. But a lot of our houses are air conditioned and a lot of our houses are very comfortable. So let's say that your loved one in some July afternoon decides that he wants to put on his winter coat. Let's say it's 100 degrees outside. If it's cool enough inside, is it okay to leave the winter coat on for a while? Well, if it's not a physical danger to the person, the answer would be yes. Now, if it's going to overheat them, of course, the answer would be no. Why do we allow this type of behavior? The reason we allow it is because the person, the Alzheimer's patient, knows that what they're doing is absolutely the correct way to do things. And if you step in and try to correct them when they know they're doing something right, even though you and I might know it's not right, you are setting up a very stressful situation. So what you want to do is you want to reorient them only when it's absolutely necessary. Also, when you're caring for someone with Alzheimer's, remember that touch is crucial. Okay? So, whenever possible, give them a hug. Approach them from the front with your hands open, an open stance, very non-threatening. Pat their shoulder like you would, pat an infant. Offer them security. Validate their feelings. If your loved one would become anxious and say, "I'm scared," you might say something like, "I'm scared too." Or if they say something like, "I want to go home," you don't want to reorient them and tell them necessarily you are home. You probably want to do something like tell them, "Yes, I always loved your home." Okay? Why would you do that? Well, it's all about making them feel as safe and as validated as you possibly can. The other thing you want to do is you want to kind of listen for the hidden meanings. Sometimes things like "I want to go home" simply mean I miss a simpler time. I miss the time when I was young and my mom and dad were taking care of me. And when you have your loved one who has Alzheimer's say something like, "I want to go home to my mother's," well, mom might have been dead for 30 or 40 years. You could treat it one way by saying, "Honey, your mother's dead," but that can be very disconcerting. So another way to say that, or another way to handle that, might simply be to redirect. To say something like, "Yeah, I always loved your mother. Your mother's a really neat lady. I want to go home." "Yeah, I want to go home too." Because the fact is, if you think about it, if you have a loved one with Alzheimer's, chances are that their behaviors, their verbiage and whatnot, is really geared around emotions that they might be feeling. Very often they're fleeting, okay? So the situation will change. You also want to try to remember to the best of your ability to control their environment. You don't want too much stimulation. You want to give them times when they'll get frequent rest. That's where you control the environment, turn the lights down, perhaps, pull the curtains, and make it clear that this is time for everyone to wind down a little bit. Keep them busy. Okay, in a future video I will talk about scheduling and whatnot, but just painting with a broad brush here, keep them busy because schedules are very helpful for someone who has Alzheimer's. It helps them to feel useful. It helps them to feel like they're on point. I always tell my families who are caring for a loved one with Alzheimer's, perhaps Dad used to go off to the office every day. And very frequently in these cases, if Dad's the one who has Alzheimer's, might get to the point where around, 4 o'clock, 4:30, he might start to get real fidgety. That might be about the time when he was thinking about coming home. Well, now when the situation arises to where he's starting to feel fidgety and whatnot, we call this sundowners, it may be time for Dad to go home. Well, that might be a good time to give him the mail, to sort the mail and kind of work with that. So these are some of the things that we want to be thinking about. I guess the bottom line from my perspective is You want to search for what we call the Alzheimer's blessing. And when I say that, lots of times people right away will say, how can this possibly be a blessing? But there are blessings involved. It's a way for you to spend time with your loved one who has Alzheimer's, to be with them, to be present, to care for them. And you will start to see some moments that can be joyous. You'll also start to see some moments that will lead to extreme frustration, and that's why it's so very important for you not only to care for your loved one and to accept their behavior, but also to de-stress yourself, and we're going to talk about that in future videos. So once again, I want to thank you for tuning in to our Alzheimer's Caregiver series, and this one in particular on caring for the Alzheimer's patient. And I invite you to look around our website where you'll find all kinds of resources on how to care for your loved one with Alzheimer's. Thanks so much for tuning in.